So today I'm here to talk to you about listening activities in your adult classes. Okay, so everyone should know there's 4 language skills that we need to learn in order to be able to communicate effectively in another language. They are listening and reading, which are receptive skills, and writing and speaking, which are productive skills. The focus today, again, is on listening. And I think in APIWA situations, because it literally means conversation schools, our focus is more on conversation, and maybe the listening is, a little bit secondary, but in my opinion, it's just as important, if not more. Because without listening and being able to understand what you're listening to, there's no way you can respond, and communication breaks down. So, why are listening exercises important? Oh, 3 hands, okay. 1, 2, 3.
To lay the groundwork for later stuff, like pre-teaching almost.
Because if you can't understand what the other person is saying, there's no point asking anything.
It's also getting a different voice from the teacher's voice over and over again.
Yes.
And it also establishes the proper cadence for speaking.
Intonate, yeah. Very good.
To help the students synthesize the other skills.
Great answers, you guys. Thank you for helping me with that. And one other point, I guess, is getting your students more familiar with conversational reductions, which we do a lot when we're talking. But, when you're learning textbook language, you're not as familiar with those like wanna, gonna, have to, those kind of things. Yes. So those were all of my notes, thank you. And a few more. Okay. Listening, for me, I find it one of the most difficult skills to teach because the results are not as quantifiable as, giving someone a grammar exercise. You can say, well, this is right, this is wrong, this is right, this is wrong. But you can't tell somebody how they're listening is right or wrong. So that's why I find it difficult. So unlike speaking, writing. Okay, so listening is a skill that has to be built gradually, and it has to be learned like any other skill. Listening doesn't just come naturally. So I would say even in our first languages, which for everybody is it English, we don't hear everything we listen to. If we did, I personally would just go crazy if you were listening to everything that your ears were taking in. One expression that came to mind, because I've always heard it kind of pejoratively, is you have selective listening. And I think you have to have selective listening because you're listening most of the time for specific information. When you're listening to news or lectures or traffic reports or weather reports, if you pay attention to how you listen, you're just kind of listening with half an ear. And then when your city comes on the radio, then your ears kind of tune in because that's the information you're looking for. So when you begin listening, you have an idea before you start listening of what you want to get out of the recording or the radio program. Okay. My point is we also have to help our students with filtering out unneeded information from audio programs. So, does anybody have any adult students that when you tell them, okay, today listening exercise, and you're like, or not too much excitement? Is that Dave? Thank you. Okay. So why do you think some of your adult students are a little so lukewarm on listening exercises?
That's the hardest part.
I think a common complaint, whether they actually think a kid is or not, is that they think they speak too fast. Usually it's one of those conversation, they go, too fast, too
Yeah.
fast.
Yeah.
And so they're kind of apprehensive about it.
Yeah.
And then with receptive skills like reading and listening, students may feel, well, I can just do that on my own. Why am I paying money to come here
Right.
for something I can just do myself?
Right. Yeah, that's a good point.
Because it's an private school, so they want to produce more conversation rather than, go out on the street and just listen to someone, ordering a pizza away.
Right. However, if that worked, I would be a fluent Japanese speaker.
Right.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you had your hand up.
Oh, I can.
It's my peripheral vision. Okay. Yeah, and I think a lot of times in the past, listening exercises maybe weren't done very well, or they weren't done properly by previous teachers, or students, like because they are kind of fast or more natural, if they lose track early on, they stop listening because they decide early on, I'm not going to understand it anyway, so they just kind of tune out. This happens to me sometimes. You get stuck on one word, and you're trying to, I know that word, and you're trying to translate it in your head, and then you miss the rest. And another big mistake, I think, is they're trying to understand every word, which is not Ready for a listening exercise?
Yes.
Okay.
スーさんはよく勉強しますか？
ええ、毎日日本語を勉強します。よく図書館に行きます。図書館で本を読みます。でも、日本語のテープはあまり聞きません。
週末は何をしますか？
そうですね。よく友達と映画を見ます。
日本の映画ですか？
いいえ、アメリカの映画をよく見ます。日本の映画はあまり見ません。それから時々テニスをします。
毎日朝ごはんを食べますか？
いいえ、食べません。でも時々コーヒーを飲みます。
スーさんは1週間に何回朝ごはんを食べますか？Yeah. So, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with what I just did to you?
No needed.
Like, I have no idea
No
what I'm
more.
listening to.
Yeah.
Don't know the questions beforehand, maybe that would
Yes, definitely.
Just got slapped with a wet dish of Japanese.
Yes. Yeah, I would be very angry at my teacher if they did that to me, and I'm just, like, I get so sorry.
It's okay. I understand.
So, so now we're getting into how you should be setting up listening tasks in your adult classes. Sorry, I know you speak fluent Japanese, so it kind of went against old
Killed my confidence in a way.
No, but I mean, during the rehearsal, like Chris Bell, like he just passed his NICU, and he was like, it's difficult because if you don't know what you're listening for, then how, even in English.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say before that one of the big things that I guess they don't like about listening activity hurts your confidence. If you don't understand, it's too hard.
I hope you can bounce back from that.
Oh, no. It's okay.
Okay.
I was actually listening, thinking, "Oh man, is she gonna want the answers to these or what?"
Yeah, right, exactly. Like you don't know what my expectation was, and yeah. So how many of you kind of got stuck on the first part, even trying to figure out what the conversation was about? Yeah. Daily activities. How often? student does things. So basically, before starting a listening exercise, there's a lot of kind of lead-up work that needs to be done with that. So number one is the lead-in, which is basically, you don't have to write this down because it's in my handout. Intro to the topic. Just trying to brainstorm a little bit and find out what your students already know about that topic. Any vocabulary that they may already know, that's useful. You can do this, you can also show pictures, depending on what, the listening activity is about. Bring pictures in and get them to brainstorm around that, because as was mentioned before, some people need more visual support than others. There's also something called cloud prediction, which we will demonstrate a little bit later on in this presentation. The cloud prediction is actually in the Interchange teachers' books, and it's a really good brainstorming activity for reading and listening exercises. So, like I said, we'll come back to that. Then you want to start the pre-task work, which is vocabulary and grammar confirmation. So this involves you going through the listening task or the reading, as it may be, but in this specifically, going through the listening transcript and picking out vocabulary that you think is going to be challenging, vocabulary that maybe they haven't come across before, and have those answers ready for, if they don't know it, you're going to have to explain it. And then you are going to set the task for the listening activity. There are many ideas for that, and we're actually going to do them in just a couple of minutes. Some of them are called I Heard It. You will have a chance to play these games. Word count, etc. Then you play the audio recording, and after you do that, you ask your students to volunteer their answers. And number 6, could they complete the task? If no, go back to number 4 and play the audio again. And I think it's really important to stress that just because your student has to listen to a recording 3, 4, 5, even 6 times, it doesn't mean that they're failing. It's a process. That each time they listen, they're hearing a little more. Each time they listen, they're getting better at listening. So don't be discouraged by the amount of times or think that, why aren't they getting this? It's a process, and it takes a long time. And that's why it's also a little bit hard to teach, and why some of your students may not be that into it. It doesn't have kind of an immediate payoff, but, important. Okay. And next, yes, if they could answer it, then you move on to post-listening activities, which again, I will get to in a bit. So, what I'd like to do now is have you be my students. Can you guys pass these? Thanks. everybody to do right now is open to the page that looks like this. Okay. So, let's try pre-target task A. I heard it. Okay, so first, can you please repeat all of the words after me? And for those of you who speak Japanese, I apologize for my accent. Okay, ready? Hon.
Hon.
Kinjo. Tepu. Eiga. Asa gohan. Eigo. Hiru gohan. Tomodachi. Okay. Are there any words in there that people don't know?
I know ego.
Okay, let's go through all of them. Kinjo is neighborhood. Teipu is cassette tape, right? Eiga, movie, good. Asa gohan?
Breakfast.
Nice. Eigo. Thank you. Hiru gohan?
Lunch.
Good. Tomodachi? Okay. So, for this activity, I'm going to play the recording again, and I want you to check off only the words that you hear. So, I'm going to give you a hint. Hint. You deserve it. You've been very nice. There, you will leave 3 blank. So there are 3 words that you are not going to hear. Okay? Yes, they are.
スーさんはよく勉強しますか？
A、毎日日本語を勉強します。よく図書館に行きます。図書館で本を読みます。でも、日本語のテープはあまり聞きません。
週末は何をしますか？
そうですね。よく友達と映画を見ます。
日本の映画ですか？
いいえ、アメリカの映画をよく見ます。日本の映画はあまり見ません。それから時々テニスをします。
毎日朝ごはんを食べますか？
いいえ、食べません。でも時々コーヒーを飲みます。
Not in order, I'm sorry. The next one.
Health and
So, yeah, thanks.
Actually, it messed me up. That not knowing
Yeah,
that.
do not do that to your students. I've got 4 blank. 4 blank? Who has 3 blank? Anybody else have 3 blank? Okay, which ones did they, which words did they not say? Yes.
Tomodachi.
They said Tomodachi. So, ideally, for people who had, they didn't complete it correctly, we would go back, play it again, but due to time constraints, we will not. But just so you know, check your students' answers. If no, go back to number 4. If yes, then we move on to post-task work. Okay? So the next pre-target task B, word order. Okay. So there's a couple new words here. So, kohi, coffee. Toshokan.
Library.
Tennis.
Dennis.
Eiga. Good. Okay, so you're going to number these words from 1 to 5 in the order in which you hear them. Clear? Yes. By the time we're done, you'll be able to say this whole dialogue.
Assurance.
Oh.
スーさんはよく勉強しますか？
A、毎日日本語を勉強します。よく図書館に行きます。図書館で本を読みます。でも、日本語のテープはあまり聞きません。
週末は何をしますか？
そうですね。よく友達と映画を見ます。
日本の映画ですか？
いいえ、アメリカの映画をよく見ます。日本の映画はあまり見ません。それから時々テニスをします。
毎日朝ごはんを食べますか？
いいえ、食べません。でも時々コーヒーを飲みます。
Good. That's part of the process. Okay, what's number 1? Number 2? 3? 4? 5? See how much better you feel then? All right.
I'm fine. Yeah.
Woo! Okay. Okay. Okay, so last, the pre-target task, C, word count. Okay, so let's review the words. Mainichi. What? Let's see. Okay, mainichi. Every day. Yoku.
Often.
Good. Amai?
Not so much. Not much.
Not
very
much.
much.
Good. Yeah. Tokidoki.
Sometimes.
Good. Zenzen.
Never.
Never.
Wait, what's your point?
Often. Is everybody okay? Okay, so you're going to write how many times you hear each word. Please write a number, or you can just check. Everyone ready?
スーさんはよく勉強しますか？
A、毎日日本語を勉強します。よく図書館に行きます。図書館で本を読みます。でも、日本語のテープはあまり聞きません。
週末は何をしますか？
そうですね。よく友達と映画を見ます。
日本の映画ですか？
いいえ、アメリカの映画をよく見ます。日本の映画はあまり見ません。それから時々テニスをします。
毎日朝ごはんを食べますか？
いいえ、食べません。でも時々コーヒーを飲みます。Health insurance.
So how many times did you hear mainichi? 3, 2, 1. Yoku? 4.
3.
I made a recount of that one. Recount.
Okay, I'll recount. Amani? Twice. Tokidoki? Twice. Okay, Zen.
Oh, they just said Zen.
All right, I don't know my
What a recount of Yoku.
Okay. Next. Okay, so in those tasks that I set you, there's no kind of grammar focus. Maybe it's all just kind of vocabulary and focusing on the vocabulary that you can recognize in a conversation. I'm not asking for, any real answers to questions about what people are doing or how often they do it. So I think these types of exercises are important because a lot of us will have adult students in books that are too difficult for them. And, they always say it's really, really difficult to make a difficult book easier. But this is one of the ways that you can do it and still, help your students feel good that they're accomplishing something in a listening exercise. I think it's important to remember it's not the actual audio recording that makes it difficult. It's the task that you set. For example, you could have your students listen to a BBC news report, like World News Report, and some of your lower level students would be like, I can't do that. Like, I won't be able to understand anything. Even something simple like getting them to count how many famous people they hear is, they're getting something out of it. So you can level down, level up. Any questions so far? Okay, so moving on to a more difficult exercise. Pre-target task. D, the conversation. Got a language chart here, a cross chart. So, we've already gone over the adverbs of frequency at the top. Every day, often, sometimes, not often, not at all. And obviously, if time allowed, I would have pre-taught all of the verbs. I'm assuming that some of you know some of them. Okay, so first we have Nihongo o benkyou shimasu. Nihongo o benkyou shimasu. Toshokan ni ikimasu. Nihongo no teipu o kikimasu. America no eiga o mimasu. Nihon no eiga o mimasu. Tenisu o shimasu. Kohi o nomimasu. Okay, so last time you will have to listen to Susan. Please do your best and tell me how often Sue does each of these activities in a week.
These ones are in order.
Oh my God.
What?
These ones are in order.
These ones
Yes.
are in order. I am sorry about the mistake earlier. I wasn't trying to trick you.
Childcare.
Okay.
スーさんはよく勉強しますか？
A、毎日日本語を勉強します。よく図書館に行きます。図書館で本を読みます。でも、日本語のテープはあまり聞きません。
週末は何をしますか？
そうですね。よく友達と映画を見ます。
日本の映画ですか？
いいえ、アメリカの映画をよく見ます。日本の映画はあまり見ません。それから時々テニスをします。
毎日朝ごはんを食べますか？
いいえ、食べません。でも時々コーヒーを飲みます。
Okay.
How often before they say what they're going to do, huh?
Yes.
That's where it caught me off because it's like,
Sounds nice.
Yeah. In an ideal classroom situation.
no, it's okay.
Okay, so how often does Sue study Japanese?
Every day.
Good. How often does she go to the library? Listen to Japanese tapes?
No.
Good. Watch American movies? Watch Japanese movies? Play tennis?
Not often.
Play tennis?
Sometimes.
Drink coffee?
Sometimes.
Yes, very good. Okay.
She was watching TV.
Okay. So, as promised, I want to go back and I didn't want to do this with a Japanese recording because I couldn't count on everybody's Japanese level and if it would work. So we're actually going to do this activity in English. So cloud prediction, which you will find in your booklets, I believe, on the second page. Okay, so just kind of what you would do as the teacher. You can draw a cloud or not. Just kind of contains it. So, can you read me the words in that cloud? You got one.
Yeah.
Got
Top one. Health insurance.
health insurance.
Part-time.
Health plan? Sorry, what?
Oh, part-time?
Part-time, sorry.
Sorry. School.
Expensive.
Childcare.